Welcome to the Downtown Design Review. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Welcome to the Downtown Design Review Committee meeting for December 18th, 2014. Please silence your phones. Paula, do you want to do the roll call?
Betsy Brunstetter.
Present.
Gigi Faulkner. Charles Ainsworth.
Present.
Ike Eganwande. Connie Scothorn. Richard Tannenbaum. You have a quorum.
Great. Our first order of business is the approval of the minutes. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve. Second.
That was a Chuck and Ike. Ainsworth and I have to, yeah, sorry. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we have no cases withdrawn. We have no continuance request. We have two items on the consent docket. Do we have a motion, or do we have someone here that would like to speak to those items? Okay, anybody?
Move to approve. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second from from Chuck and Ike for the to approve the consent docket. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent docket is approved. Moving on to items for individual consideration. We have 431 West Main. Is the applicant present? I would like to move this to the heel of the docket. Okay, we have 100 West Main. Is the applicant present? Good. Hi. So glad you're here. Okay. We're going to have Michael describe your project.
Okay. Yes, this item is kind of a revision to the Century Center project for the corner of Robinson and Sheridan. The items before you are variance requests for two street-adjacent improvements on the project, one being a passenger loading and unloading zone on West Sheridan on the south side of the building. And the variance request for that involves proximity of the exiting driveway of that loading area to the corner of Robinson. And there's an issue with the distance, and it's not compliant with city standards for the minimum distance of separation in that area. The second item also involves maneuvering in the public right-of-way to access that passenger loading area. Secondly, there is a proposed off-street parking area on the west side of the building on North Robinson. Those parking stalls are what would appear to be your standard on-street parking stalls, but they're actually off-street on the in the right-of-way, and they are again accessed by using maneuvering in the public right-of-way to gain access and egress from those stalls. And again, that's a provision of the code that requires a variance. That concludes our presentation.
Okay, Jeremy, you want to add anything to that?
No. Do I need to
Oh, wait,
formally
and
announce?
could you state your name?
Yep, Jeremy Gardner with Bootser Gardner Architects.
I suppose you just wrote it down on the...
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Michael, do you have any concerns about that you'd like to express?
We've approved variances or recommended approval for variances like these in the past, most recently in association with the courthouse project over by the jail. It's important to offer these kinds of facilities for a use that is proposing to occupy this space, and due to the tight distance between the corner of Robinson and the parking garage driveway access also on West Sheridan, there's just not a lot of room to get both those driveways in to enter and to exit that passenger loading area without violating the standard for the separation. So we're supportive of that.
Okay. Any questions from the committee? Any comments from the gallery? Do we have a motion?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I would like to make a motion that we approve the application on the basis that it meets the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance, and also with the condition that the applicant obtains an approval of variance for the driveway and arterial separation standards, and that the applicant obtains approval of a variance from the prohibition against maneuvering in the public right-of-way to directly access parking stalls. And I believe I need to make a separate one for the next
Right.
part.
Okay. That was an I can check motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Did a great job with that. All right. Do you have another motion for me?
Yes, I do, Madam Chairman. I move to provide a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustment for a variance from the driveway separation standards and the prohibition against direct access from the public right-of-way without intermediate use of service aisles.
Okay. Do we have a second? Okay. That was Connie. I can Connie. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
The next item is 1320 Classen Drive. Is the applicant present? Okay. Hang on for just a second.
This is the project at Classen Commons that we heard for the first time several months ago. I think this is the third time it's been presented to this committee. Since the last meeting, the architect has worked further with Heritage Hills and an architect that they employed to address some of the concerns that mainly had to do with street interaction, facade transparency, and getting more entrances into the building to liven up the streetscape. So I think they've done all that. One major architectural change was instead of the hipped roof, they went to a parapet, decorative parapet that does look a lot more contemporary and urban for this area.
Would you like to add anything to that?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
We've worked very closely with Heritage Hills and appreciate their efforts, and it was a team effort, and we all, I think, resolved at a wonderful project here that will enhance this area. So,
I would say that you've made great improvements.
well, thank you very
Is
much.
anyone in the gallery, would anyone like to speak to this? Any questions or comments from the committee?
Well, I'll just say it looks just 100% better than I did last time. I think both architecturally and you included saving some trees, which I appreciate.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
Okay. I move that we approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the intent, regulations, and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance.
Second.
Okay, that was a Connie and Ike motion. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for working with us. The next item is 1216 and 1232 North Classen Boulevard. I believe that Michael has something to say about that. Oh, Lisa has something to say about that?
Yes, the committee saw this project at the last meeting, or one or two meetings ago, and this project is, as presented here, is exactly the same, except that the street address that was referenced in the original application, the applicant and owner are now going with a different street address, so we had to technically we wanted to technically renotice it and technically bring it back to you so that we have it on record for the same address they're using for permit. Also, in all that paperwork review, we realized that the committee had approved a sign that's in the right-of-way, and we agree that the sign is appropriate and necessary, but it technically needs a variance to be in the right-of-way.
Okay, so this is pretty much just housekeeping.
Yes, it is exactly like you saw it last time.
Okay. Yeah, is there anyone in the gallery that would like to speak to this? Do you have any questions?
No, but I have to abstain from this.
You're abstaining. Connie is abstaining from this vote. Do we have a motion?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I will motion that we approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the Downtown Design District zoning ordinances, with the condition that the applicant obtain approval of a variance from the sign ordinance prohibition against signs being located in the street right-of-way.
Great. Do we have a second? Okay, that was I can check. All in favor? Any opposed? You have another motion for me?
Yes, I do, and I would like to move that we provide a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustment for a variance from the sign ordinance which prohibits signs in the street right-of-way.
Second. Okay, that was Ike and our dear Gigi. Gigi is here now. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you for being here. Thanks for coming back. We appreciate that. And we have an item that we pushed to the end of the docket, which was 431 West Main. I believe the applicant is present now.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee. My name is Anthony McDermott. I'm the founding principal of TAP Architecture at 415 North Broadway Avenue, 73102.
Okay, I think one of Michael or Lisa will be presenting something.
Yeah, this item is on the parking garage that's directly south of City Hall here that was recently completed. And with the exception of one of the signs, this item wouldn't be before you, but because that one sign is proposed to be located in the street right-of-way on the Main Street frontage of the project near one of their entry driveways, that again, just like the last case, requires a variance to have that sign located in the public right-of-way. We have just a little bit of background. The sign was originally constructed and has already been built, and it was planned to have been mounted on the south facade of the building, similarly to the way that the same sign is being proposed on the wall of the building on the north elevation. However, when they realized that the sign would be blocked visibly by the trees that are on West Main, and the cars that are traveling west on West Main would not necessarily be able to see the sign when the trees are in full foliage. They opted to propose to take that same sign off the building and mount it in the right-of-way pretty close to the curb of the street. We have reviewed that particular request. And while we're sympathetic to the visibility issue, I think we would prefer that it remain on the building, but if it's going to be placed in the right-of-way, we think a 10-foot sign is too tall and kind of imposing for the pedestrian traffic that might be walking along in front of that structure, and we are recommending that the Commission approve or recommend approval of the variance for this sign to the BOA, but with the condition that the sign be reduced in height to 5 feet. That completes our presentation.
Okay. Anthony, you want to address this? Is this a construction issue?
It's a visibility issue. When we realized that the sign indicating the entrance to the garage was going to be obscured by the landscaping we elected to relocate it to the ground where it can be seen. There are, as you know, there are examples of monument signs around downtown, and this is in the utility zone, and we think for the sake of communication and clarity and many precedents out there in downtown, that this was a really practical solution.
Okay, any questions from the committee or any opinions?
You're blaming it on the trees, are you?
We love trees.
Yeah.
Just trying to live with them.
I'll just say that I think the sign is too big.
Okay. Anybody else?
If you shorten it, do you think that it still impair the visibility, or does it need to be that tall to be visible, since it's now moved out toward the street?
We are just trying to. We're trying to be consistent with the signage, the rest of the signage on the garage, and in scale, and we would need to refabricate it, obviously.
Okay. I mean, I just drove by this site this weekend, and it's a short walk. It's not a long distance to see. I mean, that's really a big sign for only 300 feet or so of distance that you have to go from.
I think it could be shorter, and you could probably read it better
The,
in reality.
we are, you know, obviously there are other precedents downtown. There's the exclamation mark outside the chamber. There's the monument sign outside of Red. There are many other precedents in downtown, and we are just trying to be good stewards.
Well, we appreciate that. Anybody have a motion? Right. First, is there anyone in the gallery that would like to speak to this item? Come forward. Thank you.
Jason Johnston. I'm here on the Mayor's Committee of Disability Concerns. I monitor this on a regular basis. It's positioned close to that corner. You know, we always really consider wheelchair access to things, but visually impaired, I'm really concerned it doesn't beep or anything. All our signs beep now. And it seems to me that it's really in the way in that corner as far as someone who needed to make that transition. So that's just my objection to it. It just feels like it's in the way.
Okay.
I mean, I know there are trees, but the trees, you'd run into the other part of the tree before you ran into the trunk. And this way, you could just run right into the sign. So that's just my note for the day.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this? Okay. What would you guys like to do?
Okay, I make a motion that we approve the application on the condition that the applicant reduce the height of the sign, not to exceed 5 foot. Do I need to read it all?
Would you rather do a continuance and have a new proposal put forth, or just?
Well, I think if you reduce the size to 5 foot, that's fine, or come up with a new design, which I think would probably be appropriate. So,
Anthony?
What would you have me do?
Would you rather have a continuance or, and come back with a new design, or just reduce the size of it?
I think the new design would look exactly like this design, only reduced in size.
so then the original motion was true based on, I approve it based on reducing the height to not exceeding 5 foot tall.
Okay, do we have a second? Okay, Connie and Ike motion. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
We need a second motion.
Wait, sorry, we've got a variance. Oh, okay. So we need to restate that motion. Thank you. Can you restate that motion? To make that a condition of the motion of the approval?
Okay, I move approval of the application based on the size being reduced to not less than 5 foot tall, and that you approve a variance from the sign ordinance against the sign being located in the right-of-way.
Not more than 5 feet tall.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you'll have to do another motion. But okay, Ike, do you agree with that motion? Yes. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Connie and Ike. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Now, do we have another motion?
Okay, I move that we provide a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustments for a variance in the sign ordinance, which prohibits signs being in the street right-of-way as long as the sign is 5 foot tall or less.
Do I have a second? Connie and Ike motion. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Okay. The next, we have no other business. We have two communication presentations. One is Scott Parker with TAP Architecture. Is Scott here? Okay, this is, or Anthony, are you going to make this presentation for the Santa Fe station?
Absolutely.
Scott must have the flu, right? Are you prepared to make it? Would you like to put your thoughts together a little bit before? We have another presentation that you could.
I mean, I'm absolutely familiar with the project.
Okay.
Is this an information item?
Yes.
Okay. Great. Well, that's awesome. Do I have some visuals? Okay. That's good. It's much better than me doing this.
I had loads of questions about this.
Oh, great. Awesome.
I mean, while we're loading here, we're loading.
Terrific. Well, to be absolutely honest with you, I didn't know that I was going to be presenting this morning, but it's a very fast-track project. The funding for the project involves a Tiger grant, a federal Tiger grant from the FRA, Federal Railway Administration, and there are milestones attached to the grant, which compels us really to move through the approval processes, and there are multiple approving bodies for this project, including yourselves. So we would just like to introduce you to the scope of the project and the purpose of the project. It's a very, I hope I can navigate through this. It involves not only the renovation and restoration of the Santa Fe station, but it affects a lot of the environs around the station. And as all of us know, the environment around the station it has been somewhat compromised over the years. The station itself was built in the 30s by the Santa Fe, by the railroad. It's a beautiful, beautiful piece of Art Deco work. It's redolent of its period, but since passenger rail has sort of declined in the United States over the years, so has the station and its use. So the plan for the building is to put it back into use as an intermodal hub, which will accommodate multiple modes of transportation, not just currently, but also into the future. So immediately it will be a better place for Amtrak to operate out of. Obviously, they currently operate the Harlem Flyer that runs to Fort Worth and back. But it will also be a place where in the very near future, the streetcar will operate through, and buses will be able to have a stop there. And then in the future, we like to entertain the idea that commuter rail would operate out of this facility, and in the more distant future, possibly high-speed rail. So, of course, bicycles and pedestrians as well. The concept is ambitious. It involves completely reinventing the environment around the building in terms of plazas and stops, and it also contemplates pushing the tunnel, the existing tunnel that accesses the platforms, the Amtrak platforms. It would push the tunnel all the way through the elevated tracks, underneath the elevated tracks, and connect to Bricktown. So there's also as you see on the graphic, there's also an intention to improve the connectivity to Bricktown and also improve the urban landscape on the east side of the tracks, as well as connecting to the contemplated and planned, now we think, streetcar stops, which will be here and here, with the possibility of connecting to the new tunnel extension. Sure. That's it. We don't have detailed drawings yet, but the streetcar stop, there is a streetcar stop that's planned and contemplated here and here. And so...
What about the one across the street?
Oh,
The
thanks.
one that's called out, yeah.
Thanks. right? And this stop is also planned in the Phase 2 of the streetcar project, which is, as you know, MAPS 3. So this streetcar stop is connected to the facility via this crosswalk, this pedestrian crosswalk. So there will be a new arrival court on the north side of the building, a repurposed parking lot, and the Project 180 landscaping will be on the north end of the block and on the south end of the block.
That's called out as an ad alternate, is that part of the project?
It is part
of some of the drawings that we've seen.
Right. It's the way that we're going to deliver that part of the project. It will, everything east of the curb is within our scope. However, we thought it made a lot of sense to put the Project 180 piece back into Tetra Tech's scope as they redo Gaylord. So even though it's within our scope, from a dollar perspective, we are going to pull it out and put it back into the Project 180. So it's not an ad alternate, really. We just have to identify the value of that piece of the project so that we can pull it out of our dollar scope and put it back into the 180 project. It has we have a very large consultant team. There are many complications in terms of approving bodies and coordination with Bricktown, Railroad, DDRC, HP. I mean, it's a wonderful project, but it is complicated, which is why we are bringing this item before you as an informational item, because it will have to come back to you in the new year on your docket.
I'd like more detail as to, it's a little obscure as to how you're treating the walls of the tunnel as you punch through. It's just the drawings that I've got are...
Very preliminary.
Yeah.
Right.
So that would be important for me to see.
On the east side, Madam Chairwoman?
On the east side, on the Bricktown side.
Bricktown side.
And as far as the streetcar stop I know it's in the future, that crosswalk, will that be signaled at all? Will it have any kind of flashing lights or anything to?
It's, obviously we want it to be as safe as possible. I think that'd be a Public Works traffic management call.
Okay. Are you suggesting that to them, or?
It certainly has been a topic of conversation, yes. I don't want to...
So, Anthony, just how are they going to secure this? Is that going to be open 24? This is an operational issue more than anything. Is it open 24 hours or?
Again, on the design side, this will be operated by COTPA, and on the design side, we are providing the ability for the tunnel to be secured. So I can't speak really to the operational hours, but I can tell you that COTPA wants this facility to be a revenue-producing facility, and that we are making plans to accommodate different types of commercial uses, and I would think that the access through the tunnel would be tied to those commercial uses and their hours of operation. Obviously, in the future, if we get commuter rail, then things change. Things will change. It depends on the hours of operation of the commuter rail and the tenants of the building.
Well, I wasn't necessarily interested in the hours more than could it be secured when it was not?
Yes, Chuck. The answer is yes. Sorry. Yes.
So looking at this in comparison to, say, the Fort Worth intermodal, there's very little parking. And I know that you don't really have a lot of choice in that. You've been given a project to do. Any thoughts on that? Have you been?
The part of the project involves, it has a very complicated funding mechanism also, and ODOT contributed to the project, and their contribution is this parking lot on the north side of Maine, which provides 72 parking spaces, which are also available to support the operation of the facility.
Next to Chuck's building?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, between Chuck's building and the tracks.
Okay. So that tunnel will also help in connecting those things.
Yes. And on the design side, the design team side, we're trying to balance the goals of creating a wonderful new urban space and parking. Our landscape architects are Herr Schaut out of Chicago, and their most recent and most visible work is the Sandridge Commons and the yet to be opened new Kerr Park. So I'm very excited about their work and their abilities and talents.
Any other questions or comments? Any comments from the audience? Thanks very much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks. Thanks, guys.
It is very exciting. The next presentation is John Picard. We received hard copies a day or so ago on this project.
Madam Chairman, members of the committee, I am honored to return to Oklahoma City. As you know, Oklahoma City has played a really important role in my professional career, and we're excited to, for informational purposes, share with you our vision for 499 Sheridan, which we really believe will continue the extraordinary renaissance that this community is experiencing. I need to understand the clicker. Do I have a? Oh, thank you. You're going to do it. Excellent. So I think you all know very well where the site is, but it's bounded on the east by Hudson, on the south by Sheridan, on the west by Maine. In the image before you on your monitors, the site is indicated in red. Okay? And then here you get a little closer picture of it with the Devon Energy headquarters to the east and Bob Stern's new building for OG&E to the south. I think one of the key principles that we've embraced is how do we engage public space. And there is no question that when we looked to the design of the Devon Energy headquarters many years ago, that we really endeavored to embrace myriad gardens. And that principle is really going to influence the design as we approach 499 Sheridan. Core to shore continues to be embraced in our planning. And you can see here in this diagram how Devon Energy Center relates to that. And what we did in the design for the energy headquarters was to really bring some of the energy of myriad gardens north across Sheridan. We hope to continue to do that, and the design for 499 Sheridan. You can appreciate as an architect that the challenge is, in essence, we have commercial objectives, but our objective is how do we create a great city? And as we think about the formation of the project and its organizational strategy, we wanted to really understand how to create a great civic room. We're using Myriad Garden as the kind of the anchor, if you will. And so the organization of the mass of the tower is structured in such a way to really provide urban clarity to the public space. And I've got a series of images that will try to better explain what I mean by that. So here, what you see is how 499 Sheridan really begins to define this grand urban room. One of the things that's quite interesting is the density of Oklahoma City up until the Energy Center was really to the east, around the Skirvin and around the Chase Bank. Now with the creation of the success of Devon and the gardens, that density is starting to shift to the west. And so one of the great opportunities is the skyline has the ability to be a little bit rebalanced. Right now, if you come in from the airport, you sort of see the sort of mid-rise buildings and then the big tower and nothing. And I think with the renaissance that you're experiencing with the development, hopefully, of OG&E and 499 Sheridan, there's going to be a density which we think is appropriate to bring greater clarity and definition to the garden. And you can begin to see it here in the diagram on the left. But what we're trying to do is to actually allow the success of Myriad Gardens to step across Sheridan, across Hudson, and begin to engage not only 499 Sheridan, but also OG&E. And what you're beginning to see in this diagram as well is a strategy for being respectful not only of the historic context, but also of OG&E. And we're going to talk a little bit about why the tower shifts as it does. We'll get through the fun facts. It's a substantive project, approximately 692,000 square feet on 27 floors. It's going to really allow for the growth of the commercial district in Oklahoma City. I'm told by the experts that this will be one of the first multi-tenanted buildings to be built in this community in quite some time. And as many of you know, it is anticipated that one of the key tenants of the building will be Devon Energy. Here you can begin to see the formal strategy of the building. You'll note on the image on the left, what we've done is we've rotated the building slightly off the alignment of Hudson by about 15 degrees. And the intention of that is really to create vital, active urban spaces. We have such a treasure with Myriad Gardens that we want to capture that, and we want to bring vitality to the street. And I'm going to go through how we reinforce that through active retail uses in a moment. But so that wedge space is critically important. There's a couple things as well, and it doesn't show as clear in this diagram, but on the far left you can see the edge of Bob Stern's OG&E building. One of the things we discovered as we were master planning is if the building did not rotate back off of Hudson, what happened was we had a series of buildings like little soldiers, each one looking to the other. By rotating the building that 15 degrees, we create an urban space, and we also provide wonderful relief for, as the folks in the OG&E tower look north, they have unencumbered views because our tower has slipped off to the side. The other thing that we're doing, and you can see in the image on the right, is the floor plates to be effective commercially need to have a certain size, so they're approximately 25,000 plus square foot plates. We've modulated the mass, and the proportion of the building is of critical importance. The building is really very, very elegant, very simple, but very refined. And so what we've done is we've thinned that southern proportion of the building so it rises up, and then we've extended it another 42 feet above the height of the actual roof, and we create a beautiful crown that you can begin to see here. Okay. Now, as we've moved around the building, you get a better sense of, I was talking about the relationship with the new OG&E tower. One of the things that I think is a great opportunity is you can see how the north face of OG&E looks into this urban space. Bob Stern's office is also creating a little corner space there that we think will create something quite magical on the corner of Hudson and Sheridan. And you can see again how the mass of the building is broken down, and we think is much more in tune with the scale and the character of actually what Bob Stern's doing, even though stylistically our buildings are quite divergent, but we think they're going to be very compatible. Let me get into some of the details. So this is, I'm going to start by just talking a little bit about the primary block, the tower, and then the parking podium. And so here you'll see the tower as it could be seen at sunrise. You're looking north on Hudson. You know us well enough to know we care passionately about the character of the surface of the building. And so we're looking at a building enclosure that will be very rich, very carefully detailed. You see a series of vertical elements that will give richness to the building and sparkle in the sunlight. So this is going to be, in my mind, a little jewel in the Oklahoma skyline. And then you see the thinning of the building is incredibly important as we look north on Hudson, because you get this beautiful soaring vertical face. And then we've lifted the building up, and we've created some really, we think, powerful public spaces at the base. The building will also contribute to the character of the city at night. And what we are proposing, and this is preliminary, but we think this is what we will ultimately come back to you and recommend, is a kind of a glowing crown. So the top 40-some feet of the building will be illuminated. We have a hierarchy in the lighting so that there will be a slightly stronger, more vertically composed, glowing surface on about every 5 feet, but the total crown will glow. And we're now working through the details with all the technicians to how to pull that off. But we think this building is going to really contribute. So as you're driving in from the airport, now you see all the tops of the towers lit up and creating a little bit of magic in the skyline. The office floor plates are, not surprisingly for those of you familiar with this issue, are very, very efficient. One of the most successful office floor plates is a box. And what we're creating for 499 Sheridan is a really refined and elegant prism, but that can have the planning efficiencies that are required to satisfy the business drivers that these modern users have. So what you're seeing is 27 floors. You'll note in the section that the first 2 floors, to get in scale, are identical in floor to floor as Devon Energy Center. So they're 20 feet floor to floor. We're delivering about 35 feet clear in that public space, which is comparable to the project across the street. And then we have a parking structure of 9 floors to the west with a courtyard in between the tower and the parking. And then you can see the crown going up. This is an important plan. I'm going to take a little bit of time here. Let's start with the front door to the office. We believe the building wants to engage the city in lots of different ways. At street level, there are 2 primary entrances. There's one on the north, which will lead, there's a crosswalk we'd like to talk to you about. It's a mid-block crosswalk, but we believe that there is going to be a natural tendency for people to want to flow directly between this building and Devon Energy Center. So you go out that northern door, and we'll go across the crosswalk. We need to determine whether there's a street light there and how do we make it safe. That crosswalk actually exists right now, if you've noted the use patterns, and we just like to make it real. Obviously, there's an important entrance on the south that marks the corner of Hudson and Sheridan, and there'll be a very wonderful space. Now, the key to bringing the building to life and the key to activating the garden is true retail uses. So you can see everything you see in this plan in red is retail use. It's our vision that the northernmost zone, which is approximately 2,000 square feet, would be a home for a really great coffee shop. We anticipate that knuckle is going to literally receive thousands of people a day. This is a large building. There'll be lots of people using it, and we will have a confluence of people coming together. One of the other key links I'm going to talk about in a second on the upper floor is we're proposing a Skylink back to Devon Energy Center. So right there at the base of those escalators, you'll have people coming across the Sky Bridge and down. We believe that coffee shop is going to be real and going to be very successful. And as a result, and Sheila, my colleague on our landscape architect, is going to talk a little bit about how that influences the design for the exterior public spaces. Now we take advantage of that. We also have another 4,000 square feet of retail space along Sheridan, and then we have been increasing our approach for active uses on Sheridan. You will not be surprised that there has been some mild apprehension about whether retail is going to survive on Sheridan in the short term. But we are confident, and our client believes that active use is important, and we're prepared to contribute the space that you see in red there for active use and to work side by side to make sure that that use is appropriate. And we can debate whether it's a community use, a nonprofit, offices, or retail. Retail would be terrific, but it's going to be active. One of the things that it's an opportunity as an architect is we can learn from other projects and we can do a better job. One of the things I think is going to be much better about this project than what we did previously is we are committed to creating active use, and I'm going to show you how we do that in a moment. Let me go back, Russ. I want to also point out the alley, and we'll get into all this stuff later. This is informational, but the alley is a one-way flow through, and it's a bit of a tricky puzzle because we want to provide service access for the city building, for the folks that have the shops on the far west. So, but we also need to maintain security for one of our prime tenants. And so what we've done on the alley design is we have a series of gates. So a truck can flow in. There's a little, thank you, Russ, there's a little gate there, and then the truck can flow in. There's another gate right there. That prevents that truck from going all the way through and getting adjacent to the base of the office tower. So for instance, if you're receiving goods and materials at the city building, you can literally pull up there, unload, and there'll be a marked pedestrian path that will allow you to get access into the building. And then you depart. If you're bringing goods and materials to 499 Sheridan, what you do, you go through the first gate, you go through the second gate, and then the trucks can back in. So it's a little bit of a trick, but we have an ability to provide service for all appropriate parties and maintain appropriate security. And then everything you see in gray, of course, is the back of house that support the office building. Then finally, the key to any successful office building is parking. And the parking, the primary ingress and egress is off of Walker. We've got 3 lanes, one in, one out, one swing lane, perfectly coordinated with the deck to the west. We also have an additional ingress and egress off of Sheridan. Okay, go ahead and let's go to So level 2 is an important level. Today, to be successful, an office building needs to provide a series of, it used to be called amenities. I would call it shared resources. The resources that all tenants of the building need to be successful and to be able to recruit and retain the best. And one of the successes of Oklahoma City is your ability to bring people in and to allow these businesses to grow. And so we've created a fabulous food service that will be on the south portion of the building. The light yellow you see would be the dining zone. The dark orange is where the food prep would occur. And one of the things that we're excited about is there's a small terrace. Obviously, the weather here is challenging. It's not going to be used 12 months of the year. But in nice days, people can flow out on that south-facing terrace, enjoy the sun, and enjoy views of Myriad Garden. And then on the purple zone to the north would be a state-of-the-art fitness facility to serve the tenants of the building. The bridge goes to the north, and we'll talk in a bit about the north parking deck with a little link, and then back over to Devon. So what happens is all the activity of the building, though, comes back down to street level. So you've crossed over from Devon Energy, you go down the escalators, and your primary lobby is at street level. Okay? Here you see the building as it would look at dusk or in the morning. Across, what you're doing, you're looking north. Sheridan is running east-west in that image. It's very important to us. I know it may not be necessarily the purview of this committee about the interiors of the buildings, but the interior of the lobby is really important because the lobby enclosure is extremely transparent, and the character and the quality of that lobby contribute directly to the character and the quality of the civic space that's being defined. And so we're going to show you, we're very excited about it. It's going to be spectacular. You'll see there's a sort of a stone wall. We haven't selected the stone, obviously, that will slide through. It marks the entrance. You're looking at the south entrance, and then another retail shop there to the very left. I should say that all the images that I'm showing you of the exterior garden are images done by the architects, and the real design for that garden we'll have Sheila share with you in just a moment. Okay? So here you are inside the lobby. You're looking south. We've loved the success of the beautiful rainbow sandstone in Devon Energy. We're exploring an idea where the wall on the core would actually be done in some extremely rich woods with strong textures and grains in a beautiful pattern. And we're actually exploring the potential of taking some of the wood up into the ceiling. So we think the space is going to be compelling and exciting, and then we're designing the wall to be very transparent so the energy of that space comes through. Just the basics, here you are on the east elevation, so you're really standing on Hudson looking to the west. And here you are, it's a detail that you've crossed over from Devon Energy. You're at the northern tip of the lobby, and you are looking to the coffee shop, and the coffee shop is intended will have entrances both directly to the exterior as well as to the interior. An important note I should make about lobbies, there's been a huge transformation of thinking of a commercial office lobby, and I'm old enough to have gone through all the stages. It used to be that the commercial office lobby was very proper. It was designed for people kind of like me, my generation. That's not the case anymore. The lobbies we're designing for my daughter's generation. They're much more relaxed, they're much more informal, they're much more active. So for instance, all along the lobby wall, we're imagining we've got high tops, tables, chairs. We intend to bring life to it. We'll have power. You can plug in your iPad, plug in your phones. We want the lobby to come alive. And in some respects, we almost see the lobby as a lobby that you might find in a really nice, maybe a really nice boutique hotel. It's treading the line between the old days of a formal commercial office lobby and a hospitality industry. And then that energy from the lobby flows out on the street. And that coffee shop will bring activity to that with tables and chairs and umbrellas to be determined. Here you are. This is the Sheridan elevation. You're looking north. We've paid great care to the character of the street. We want the street to come to life. And so where the building is imagined as this really elegant, crystalline piece of sculpture, as you wrap around the block, it's richer, it's warmer, with textures. There are show windows that are detailed and in the scale of a show window. They're not sort of shopping center scale, they're shop scale. So my model is more Newberry Street than anything else. And the intention is that those windows are clear and that you're seeing into active uses. And in the few places we don't have active uses, we will have meaningful show windows that would be available to the community for the display of public arts and so forth. That image also showed you that terrace I referred to for the food service with the umbrellas that you see looking down over Sheridan Street. The next is, you're at the tip of the Sheridan, and you're looking into, we've got about 2,000 square feet of space in there with doors to be coordinated with the uses. But again, you're looking into those spaces, and the intent is you're seeing human beings. We've shown it as a bike shop and to be determined. But the idea is that they're going to be engaging. We intend to light the surfaces well, provide carefully selected details where there is a sense of quality throughout. The other thing that I'm going to touch on this image a little bit is it's wonderful as an architect when you can begin to, and in my mind, improve. And although we're very proud of what we did with Devon Energy, we think, for instance, on the parking garage enclosures, we're going to do something that's even nicer. So what you're beginning to see here is on those upper surfaces that enclose the parking, we're looking at a screen that's made out of a material called GFRC. It's fiberglass reinforced concrete. And what that allows us to do basically is to make a really delicate screen which cuts out predominant views into the parking and gives it a rich texture and color, which we think is going to contribute greatly to the character of the enclosure surface. So as we're going to show you in a moment, the parking garage actually becomes a building. Okay? And here's another detail of in those zones where perhaps you don't have an active use, and we'll highlight those as we go around, you'll have true show windows. Again, carefully lit. So this is a detail of the parking structure in which it's preliminary, but it's been fully studied. We know we can deliver this, where we're thinking of it as really a rich woven screen. And we're trying to the extent possible, reduce views into the parking. So it's very, very dense. You know, it's probably not as dense as the Devon Garage, which is almost, in some respects, it's almost lifeless because it's almost opaque. I'm referring to the Hudson facade. But it's much more opaque, for instance, than the new and very handsome City Garage, where, you know, you see in the cars, but it'll be much more opaque than that. Okay? And here you see, this is the Walker elevation with the existing city building there on the left. Okay. I'd like to introduce my colleague, Sheila, who's going to touch a little bit on the approach for the plaza and the landscape.
Good morning. My name is Sheila Condon with Clark Condon Associates. I'm glad to be here this morning to talk a little bit about the streetscape and the garden plaza that we're proposing. Russ. So as John set up for me already, this connection between the garden and the idea of civic space continuing into the front of this plaza, it really gives us a great opportunity. And it's just literally, as you walk through that beautiful curved walkway through the gardens, you can see yourself continuing on that same trajectory into this new public and civic space on the corner of this building with the building canted back. Russ. Just overall context, just give you a sense. So a couple things, we'll just touch on the streetscape a little bit. The streetscape has the standard master plan goals of the amenity zone, trees at 22 to 22.5 feet spacing, planting underneath, lighting, street furniture, and has that rhythm that is commensurate with what you have going on in downtown. So on Walker and on Main and on Sheridan, that's the rhythm we're talking about, and then we'll go into the plaza portion in a moment. Next. Just a little closer up, we're going to show you a couple of cross-sections to what those streetscape feel and look like. The top one is Sheridan, and you can see we've got the 7-foot amenity zone with trees, plantings, and we have your requirement of the minimum of 5 foot of clear walk zone. We actually have a little more than 8 feet, so we have a good clear 8 feet all around, which is great open viewing. And on the plaza side, on Hudson, you can see it varies from the minimum, which is 5 to 8 feet, all the way up to almost 60 feet. So it really does give you a lot of space to create this garden plaza that we're talking about. A couple of images, precedent images, the idea of enlivening the space. So what does that mean? Places to sit in shade, comfortable environments, walkable, flexible places. So if somebody wants to do a small event, there's room to do that. So flexible, shade, seating are some of the key components to make those successful. And specifically the idea of thinking about a garden and that garden pathway, but turning it into something in an urban context is what we're striving for. And we've switched the orientation on you just because it was easier to see the drawing, so north is off to the right. So in this case, you can see the sense of the walkway where there's different materials happening. The idea is the materiality has a rich texture, and it really, the contrast of those materials reinforce that idea of the walkway, which is an extension of the garden walkways. These are hard surfaces, but they'd be different levels of upgraded pavers, for example, and granite accents, so we would have a richness of flavor. You can see fairly large masses of planting bed areas, so that will give us the opportunity underneath the trees to have a mixture of evergreen material, flowering material, and a mixture of ground covers to give that sense of, again, that sense of garden, which is really our strong metaphor. We also have trees coming out of the garden areas, but in order to really create that bosque, that ceiling of leafy green across the whole plaza, we have some of the trees, as you can see in this, coming out of tree grates. So again, making sure we have walkability. You can also see halfway along that walkway, there's open areas for tables and chairs where there's not constant planting. So you have a sense that you're engaged with the street, you're engaged with the building, and it sort of gives you many different ways to use the space. As John mentioned, also pulling out of the idea of the coffee shop, closer to the north end of this plaza, the idea of movable tables and chairs. So lots of different ways to use the space, enjoy the space, and still have our uniform street edge amenity zone intact as well. Couple of views, looking a little bird's eye, looking as you would be from the south. Gives you a sense of that walkability. So we have the Sheridan streetscape per the downtown plans, and then again a sense of a welcoming, a little more openness on that plaza, and then you can walk up and meander through the trees, and you can begin, Russ, thanks. you can begin to sense the character. We're also looking at some permanent seating and some just simple granite bench seating that would be the anchor at the end of the planting beds. That does relate also to some of the architectural pieces actually at Myriad Gardens as well. So one last element, could you go back one, sorry, was this transition idea, which is labeled on the top of your screen as a green wall between the parking garage and the city building. That alley, the proposal is for that alley to close. And so we talked about what would be that transition. So the suggestion here is at the ground level, the first floor, for example, that becomes something that's green. So there's a little bit of relief along that green space. Thank you, Russ. And we've looked at a couple of different options, cable systems, green screen. We're really at the moment kind of favoring the one on the lower right of your pictures, which would be a vine on a green screen that would span, would transition from one building to the next. So it would be a little bright spot, something a little surprise along the way on Main Street. So that's all I have. Thanks.
So I'm now going to talk a little bit about the northern component, the parking garage. And what we've done is, first of all, let me just deal with the issue. Parking is a fact of our urban life. I think, everyone would love to think that something else can happen. The reality is there are enormous needs for parking. And so what we've done is we've taken it on. And instead of treating it as a parking garage, we've chosen to treat the parking as a building that would contribute to the dignity of this particular place. So some of the images I showed you in the previous component of the retail openings and windows and character and detail would be identical here. The richness of the infamous GFRC screen that I've been talking about would be manifest here as well. And what you're seeing is that this is really consistent with, I'll call it classical architecture. In the small world of our profession, Graham Wyatt, who's the principal with Bob Stern designing OG&E, we've talked at length about the projects, and we know what Graham's doing, and as he's designing his podium, he has a base, a middle, and a top. And although these are going to be different in character, we think they're going to be very compatible. And so what you're seeing, that classical principle influences design for this north garage. And although, yes, indeed, it's a parking garage, we are providing active use at the base, and we think it's going to be a good building, a building you can be proud of. So here you are at street level, and it's a very constrained site, and we've got challenges to deliver about 683 cars on that site. And so the parking flow, it's sort of an intertwined spiral. We've coordinated one entrance off of Main Street that you see in the upper left and another entrance off of Hudson. And then we've got an active use retail, ideally, along the north, along Main Street. And then you'll also see in the lower right the lift lobby that will serve the parkers as well as connect into the second floor, which we'll show you here. And on the second floor, you begin to see the little bridge that goes to the south goes back to 499 Sheridan, and then there's a bridge that will go across Hudson. And what I don't think made in the show, and we can share with you in the next visit, is once you cross Hudson, how this whole system links back into the tunnel systems and the public circulation system of downtown Oklahoma City. That's obviously been an important goal of ours. So here you see the north and the east elevation. One of the things that's not yet been developed is, as we begin to think about the design for the sky bridges, the sky bridge that goes across Hudson will be received into sort of a gasket device that makes it a little more graceful, that then ties through and back to 499 Sheridan. Okay. Here you are standing, again, on Hudson. You're looking kind of northwest. You can see the two bridges coming together. And one of the things we've wanted to do was to try to make sure that people feel like they're being seen. One of the goals as we think about this is when you're waiting for your elevator, that you feel like you can be seen. And to the extent we possibly can, just the use of operating vertically in the parking garage, hopefully we'll be able to see that activity, and that activity will contribute to the character of Hudson. Here you are. Sheila referred to the green wall, and we're proposing a transition zone between the existing city building on the right and the northern deck. And it's not very clear in the image, but there's a kind of a soft gray, green zone that would be the green wall, which we think is a great transition between the two characters. Okay? One of the real challenges is how do we respect the character and the importance of our history. And we have spent a lot of time looking critically at the existing context. There's an exhaustive report, which I believe has been submitted to you for your review, that can go and outline the care that has been undertaken to really understand the potentialities of the existing buildings. There are a few buildings I'm going to talk about and show with you what it is that we are recommending as a way to show respect for those buildings. At the end of the day, those buildings, charming as they are, do not allow us to meet the current business needs. And the economic evaluation will suggest that it just doesn't work. And that's a topic for more detailed conversation. So what we're trying to do is, as we develop 4989 Sheridan, find a way to respect the best of those buildings. And let me talk you through how we're going to approach it. So what you're seeing is a strategy for 1 North Hudson, the Motor Hotel, the Union Bus Station, and Carpenter Square, and how we can respect those buildings. So as you know very well, the 1 Hudson is really the old Black Hotel, and it has already undergone some unfortunate modernizations. And there's very little that is left. But one of the things that we think is quite charming, and we think is actually quite handsome, and we believe can save, is the historic frieze, which has not been destroyed, that runs around the entire base of the building. We've been talking carefully with the engineers. We believe that can be removed, protected, and we're suggesting it can be reintegrated in the design for our building. So what you're seeing here is a little close-up of the base of the parking structure, and looking at the retail we're proposing is that frieze would be used really in a nearly identical location and in a very, very similar way to mark the top. And Russ, just in case they mark the top right there of that whole retail zone. And that would run throughout. With the case of the Motor Hotel, what we would like to propose would be to carefully remove a few of the beautiful column capitals and some of the surrounding. We think it can be done, and we're suggesting that we would relocate those within the actual project. One of the things I neglected to highlight is I talked about the 2 major public entrances, the north entrance, the south entrance. The real entrance to a commercial office building is the entrance from parking. That's where the vast majority of people come. And in the design of that promenade, which is there's a detail that's blown up on the lower left, we're proposing those kind of what look blue-gray in this plan would be those column capitals would be treated and set in and rebuilt exactly as they are in a series of niches and would be beautifully lit. So as one moves along the promenade, you would have the remembrance of that building. And then we feel like you could have, within that promenade, you could have a little windows that talk about some of the important history of the buildings that were there before. The bus station has been a bit of a challenge as to how do we properly respect this. What we've gone through countless studies, and ultimately what we've concluded is the thing that we believe is the most appropriate is our client has agreed to remove the bus station sign, and depending on the choices of a whole bunch of people, potentially restore it and contribute that sign to the Historical Society. And then we're also looking at ways, one of the things that we find compelling about the bus station is the beautiful blue glass. And so one of the possibilities, and there's been great debate whether it's the right thing, would be to take some of the blue glass And if we can save it, and there's a great debate, I met with the engineers a few days ago, and they felt like we can get some of it. We're not sure how much, because it's old. They know we'll lose some in the removal. But what you're seeing in this image is some of that blue glass would be installed on the portion that the bus station once occupied. And finally, on Carpenter Square, the engineers painted a very, very bleak story on the character of the facade. To a layperson, to me, walking around, it looks like it's okay. I mean, it's got some chips. It turns out the facade behind is falling apart and literally is ready to crumble. In spite of that, what we would like to do is we would like to carefully go in, and we would endeavor to remove, you can see the scroll work frieze from Carpenter Square, and to the extent we can save it, and we believe we can save some, we just don't know how much, we would integrate that within the base of the parking. And we believe that these are ways that, although the buildings cannot practically be preserved, we think they're appropriate ways that we can respect the importance of this special district. So, in conclusion, I think you know very well from the evidence across the street that we're committed to Oklahoma City, and we're committed to creating a building that will continue to enhance the character and the dignity of this great city. We very much believe that 499 Sheridan is absolutely a continuation of the quality that you've come to expect. And we look forward to working closely with you and realizing a wonderful project.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the nice presentation. The illustrations are beautiful. The renderings are wonderful. But I feel like this is our opportunity to also communicate with you
Absolutely.
some of our thoughts on it. Do we want to kick that off? Anybody on the committee want to speak to that? Do you need your microphone?
There's a lot of people here, and this is a big, complicated project, and I think it might be nice if we listen to, I'm guessing some people want to say something before I make a comment.
Do we have anybody that is signed up for this? No? Okay. Okay, if you would take a seat, we'll throw it out to the community. Anyone in the gallery want to speak to this? Okay. We had a couple of notes that were sent to us, and I would like to, I don't know if I want to read that whole thing. But there are a couple of things that, while the committee gathers their thoughts, a young man sent a rendering, a SketchUp rendering, just a massing rendering of the block to us. He said, my name is Kerwin Moore. I'm from Durant, Oklahoma, and I'm an architecture student at OU. I follow the projects in Oklahoma City closely on OKC Talk. I'm emailing you concerning the Clayco. Oh, this is not Clayco. So is this? Well, it does say Clayco. So, project proposed at Sheridan and Hudson, and the demolition of the historic buildings currently occupying that site. I'm all for progress in the development of downtown, but I feel like this proposal could be integrated and executed much better without the expense of already existing buildings. They are beautiful structures, and as some on OKC Talk wrote, they are old buildings that represent a specific period in history and are of a style of architecture and construction that is of limited quantity in the city. I've attached an image of a SketchUp model of what I and many others imagine this project could be. Do you have that, Paula? Do you have a digital copy of that? The footprint of the project is in the middle of the southern half of the block along Sheridan. The tower is based on top of the parking structure, which has a street front office and retail. Please share the image with the others if you wish to. This email and my simple SketchUp model may not mean much from an architecture student but I do take pride in Oklahoma City and hope to make it my home one day. So that was a nice comment from a student. I'm not going to read this. We have like a 2-page letter, and I'm not going to read that here. I do have a couple of comments personally, and then, and since this is our opportunity, I'm hoping that you will take this to heart. I think that there are a couple of missed opportunities here, and the big one is that even though you've made an attempt to save the various portions of the existing buildings, there has not been a true attempt to save any of the buildings. And I think that is a concern. Another one is that I've gotten very many comments about this. The Sky Bridge is not good or urban planning. I know you have a client, and the client has desires, but it is not good at urban planning. It is not good for the city. It deactivates the streets. I'm very concerned about not having anything but a parking garage on the corner of Sheridan and Walker. It's way too important a corner. It's across the street from our new downtown elementary school that is a real benefit to Oklahoma City. And if there was some way even to create a placeholder for a building in that location, that would really please me. And I don't know how it goes out to everybody else. Also concerned about the depth of the retail that you're showing. You're showing somewhere less than 20 feet. And my knowledge of retail is that you really can't do very much in that. So, and I do want, and I really feel like, and you've referred to this several times in your presentation, that one of the lessons learned is that you really do need to get some retail, real space there. And so the depth, the less than 20 feet is not going to cut it. Also, when you do present, I would like to see an example of the GFRC panels, because the renderings, even though I know you guys do great work, I'm so proud of Devon Tower. It's so beautiful. It reflects the sun and the clouds, and it's just great. But I'm not sold on the GFRC panel, at least through your renderings. Okay, I said my piece.
I think my concern is that from an urban planning standpoint, 50% of that entire block, or maybe even a little more than 50% of the entire block, is allocated to parking garages. There's a parking garage adjacent, there are 2 parking garages adjacent to the parking in this block. We anticipate more parking structures to the south with the OG&E building. So I just, the parking is really massed together, and it's all very much the same facade. It's just a lot. When I look at the retail that has been allocated, which is the only other use besides office and parking now on that block, I see that it's about, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like it's less than 2% of the square footage just of the parking. So there's about 10,600 square feet of retail or restaurant or other use, and the parking is 757,000 square feet. To me, that is a very, very minimal percentage to look at what we're trying to do with street activation and making that very vital. And I think my final comment would be, I think the saving of just some of the architecture elements of those buildings is more minimal than we would like to see for preservation's sake. And I agree with Betsy 100% about the corner of Sheridan and Walker. I would like to see that be something other than a parking garage. That is more important. That's just a really, I think, a very important corner, and will become even more important as we're going west. Definitely we're developing west. With that said, your work is great, and thank you for bringing, beautiful presentation to us. And we'll look forward to seeing you again. But thanks for listening to us and considering. I think what we are saying is reflective of things that we now see in the community also. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, thanks. This is very exciting. I mean, this is Oklahoma City. It's hard to believe that we're going to have all these new buildings. I do also want to say what Gigi and Betsy said. It's already a dead zone at Walker and Sheridan because of the parking garage and the empty building. And it's going to continue being a dead zone forever if all we have is a parking garage and a parking garage. So this is an opportunity to really bring some life into that corner. And I think we would, I can't imagine approving something that didn't have something going on there. My other question, and I am not an architect, is the north parking garage. I honestly think that the only reason it's there is to provide that overhead connection to Devon. Because it would be so much easier, and this is where I'm not an architect, shows in, to build in another couple levels on the main west parking garage to get the same amount of parking, rather than that little bitty parking garage that goes around and around. People hate going around and around and around. The only reason I can think of that you would even do that is to put that overhead connection, which I don't think is a really good idea either. So I would encourage you to just leave that part alone. Me not being the architect, but anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Did you consider going underground with any of the parking to alleviate such a mass above ground?
We surely did. And you can appreciate the parking pressures are substantive. And there is a very fine balance of delivering, everything we want. So that it becomes problematic. I can tell you that North Garage is the creation of very real economic forces. It is not there to just connect the dots on the Sky Bridge. But one of the things I'd like to say, though, it's important to this conversation, is I think one of the great things about the DDRC is we're the first to tell you we don't have it all figured out. I think one of the great things about this process is it allows for a conversation, and we really value your perspective. You're touching on things that have been discussed and will continue to be discussed, and we thank you for it. And I will tell you, we are taking copious notes, and we're going to be, hopefully, acting on this conversation. I think we all want the same thing, and we just have to find the right balance. But we want to make Oklahoma City better. So I think this is a productive discussion, and we appreciate the suggestions you're making. So, and I didn't want to short-circuit more questions. I just wanted to.
Well, no, thank you very much for saying that, and I do want to make this part of a conversation so that you can know what our expectations are.
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
One of the issues that I kind of see is that Clayco is creating potentially, and we haven't seen Clayco's presentation, but potentially residential use that you're kind of showing on your drawings.
Right.
Those residential properties are going to be some of the most expensive in Oklahoma City, and they will have views of the tops of parking garages in almost every direction. And I think that's a big concern. And even though your client may not be willing to build an office tower or a residential tower on the corner of Walker and Sheridan, I do feel very strongly that that would be an important thought behind your development of that area.
Good.
Okay.
All right.
I think Catherine would say, I mean, I'm a preservationist, but as I look at these buildings, you know, the old hotel, I think, has been stripped of a lot of its value over the years. I think the parking garage is functionally obsolete, and you really couldn't readapt that for any other use. And, you know, the Carpenter Square and certainly the bus station have some romance in terms of, you know, keeping some remembrance of those, but I think that the buildings are kind of functionally obsolete. So, having said that, I think your development's going to be a wonderful addition to the city, but I would say I agree with the other members of the panel. I look at the Walker side where the parking garage is, and I really think it's important to bring some vitality and to that street level, and I think it's to do that. I think you got to provide spaces that put people in them, and rather than just show windows. So, anyway, you do great work, and I look forward to seeing you incorporate some of these comments and come back. Thanks.
And
Anybody else? Oh, I'm sorry, Mike.
last, I just wanted to just second a lot of the things that were already said on the committee. And thanks for coming back. I'm glad you're here back again, doing this again for our city. I think that as far as existing structures, it is important for us to pay attention to those. And as far as the rest of that corridor, paying attention to what we're going to create as permanent structures that are going to integrate with what else is going to be there, that's very important too. And I think you've heard enough of that. But those things being said, I think what you have is a very beautiful piece of architecture. I think that the links that you're trying to create between it and the city gardens are going to be great also. And the activity that you guys are going to provide it directly in front of the building that will mesh pretty well with what's going on with Devon. So I thank you guys for those emphasis, and I just ask that you just please consider everything that we're saying as well.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes, would you like to come forward, please?
I want to thank everyone for the opportunity to hear more about this project. It really is amazing what's going on in downtown Oklahoma City. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Jane Jenkins, and I'm the director of DOKC. However, what I'm about to say is my opinion and my opinion alone. And that is that all over downtown I have watched towers that were built in the 70s and the 80s and were built with outdoor plazas. I currently office in Leadership Square that has a plaza, catty-cornered from Sandridge that has a brand new plaza, across from Bank of Oklahoma that has a plaza. I've been in that office for 6 years. I do not see those places being activated. I do not see people using those places. I do see people using the Myriad Gardens. This building is catty-cornered from the Myriad Gardens, which our community is loving to death, and it's awesome that they're using that park. I would just suggest that you look at the corner of Hudson and Sheridan where you're planning the garden plaza there. If there's any way to minimize that, get more square footage, get more things that will activate the street, more retail, more things to bring the building closer to the corner in good urban planning. Understand there's security issues involved, but I really do believe, just like you mentioned yourself, our weather, you know, is difficult and does not necessarily convince itself people to be outside all the time. We have lots of urban pocket parks and plazas in downtown Oklahoma City that are underutilized, and I'd hate to see another one just be a big entrance to the building. I'd rather see the building take advantage of the landscape that is there to make that sort of the entryway into the lobby. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this? Well, that being said, thanks for being here. Thanks for your presentation. We look forward to seeing you, is it January? Okay. Okay. Now, for the rest of the meeting. Okay. We have several administrative approvals. Michael, any that you would like to address specifically? Any that we need to know that going to add a big knob onto a building or something?
No, these are all pretty straightforward. There's a couple here that are associated with the FLECO building at 126 Harrison. Most notably there, you're talking about the addition of a parking lot to the east of the existing building. Then there's a demolition that's associated with the Quarter Shore project, and then there's 3 signs, and then another parking lot in the downtown area, and that's pretty much it.
Can you talk about the demolition real quickly?
This was...
Are you talking about the demolition of those 2 small buildings and rebuilding, or am I on something else?
He mentioned a demolition.
Yeah, there's a demolition on item number 5 there, B5. This is a case that I think Brandon handled.
I think it's it was an auto shop
Right.
that faces Harvey, and then there was a Salvation Army storage building right next to it.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments on that? Okay. Any comments from the planning staff?
I just wanted to say that I'm really enjoying all the write-ups on all the cases, and I think they're very well expressed, and so it's just appreciated. Thank you.
Also, appreciation to the staff for the commissioner's training the other day. I think everybody got a lot out of it. I probably need a recap because I'm noticing some differences.
It was a great event. I'm going to compile something to circulate out to all the commissioners as a record/reminder of what we talked about.
Okay.
We'll do it again next December.
Any other comments? The next meeting date is January 15th. Is that right? No. Yeah. Is that really correct? The 15th? And in between there is a little holiday. So happy holidays to all of you. And thank you guys for another good year. We are adjourned. Oh, wait, I'm supposed to use my gavel. Wait a second. I feel really adjourned.